Welcome to the History AI podcast, where the past comes alive with facts, anecdotes, and a dash of humor. Here are your hosts, Chuck and Marco.
Hello, history buffs, and welcome back to another episode of the History AI podcast. I'm your host, Chuck.
And I'm Marco. We hope you're having a fabulous day wherever you are.
Today, we're diving deep into the life of a man named Philip Nolan, a name that may not immediately ring a bell, but by the end of this podcast, you'll realize why he's an essential part of American and Texan history. Marco, ever traded horses?
Only on the Monopoly board, Chuck. But I have a feeling Nolan was a bit more adept at it than I am.
Indeed. Philip Nolan wasn't just any horse trader, but let's start at the beginning, shall we?
Right, every hero, or anti-hero depends on how you see him, has an origin story.
Born around 1771, Philip Nolan's early life remains somewhat of a mystery, but we do know he hailed from Belfast, Ireland. He made his way to the United States, and by the 1790s, he found himself in Spanish Louisiana.
Louisiana, where gumbo and jazz meet. But Nolan wasn't there for the food or music, was he?
Not quite. Nolan was ambitious. He worked under General James Wilkinson, an intriguing figure himself, known for being both a U.S. and Spanish double agent. Under Wilkinson's tutelage, Nolan learned the ins and outs of trade, diplomacy, and yes, horse trading.
So, Nolan was trading more than just horses in Louisiana.
Precisely. While horses were his main gig, he also ventured into the realm of illegal trade, which caught the attention of Spanish authorities. But it was his desire for wild Mustangs in Texas that really set his life on a unique trajectory.
Wild Mustangs in Texas? Sounds like a country song waiting to be written.
It does. But before he got to Texas, he spent years building relations with native tribes and gaining knowledge of Spanish territories.
So, he wasn't just riding into Texas saying, "Hey, I'm here for the horses."
No, he was strategic. Nolan made multiple expeditions into Texas, primarily to capture wild Mustangs which were then sold in Louisiana. This business was lucrative, but it was also what led to tensions with the Spanish. They weren't exactly thrilled about an American making repeated trips into their territory.
So, what made his final expedition to Texas in 1800 so significant?
That's where the story gets juicy. In 1800, Nolan, with a group of about 30 men, ventured into Texas once more. But this time, the Spanish were ready for him. They saw him not just as a horse trader but as a filibuster, a term used for those who engaged in unauthorized military expeditions.
So Nolan was seen as a threat?
A big one. The Spanish attacked Nolan and his party in March 1801. Despite putting up a valiant defense, Nolan was killed, and many of his men were captured.
And they were taken to Mexico, right?
Yes. They faced years of imprisonment and hardships. Some even became involved in local conflicts, further cementing Nolan's complicated legacy.
You'd think that's where the story ends, but Nolan's influence carried on.
Absolutely. Nolan's expeditions provided valuable maps and insights into Texas, which would later prove vital for American westward expansion.
Maps, wild Mustangs, and adventures, sounds like Indiana Jones minus the whip.
If Indy was a horse trader, maybe.
Alright, let's take a quick break, and when we return, we'll dive deeper into Philip Nolan's lasting impact on Texas and the US.
From the mind behind the History AI podcast comes an electrifying journey into the past. A ripple through time, Franklin's Folly. Dive into a tale where Benjamin Franklin, America's beloved inventor, takes an unexpected journey through time. But with his leap, he unleashes a powerful ripple. Now, with dark forces lurking in the shadows, harnessing this energy to shatter and enslave the world, it's a race against time. Will Franklin fix the future? Or will history rewrite itself? Uncover the secrets. A ripple through time, Franklin's Folly. Time has never been more fragile. On Amazon pre-sale now. Welcome back, folks. Before the break, we discussed Philip Nolan's escapades in Texas. But his story didn't end with his death. His legacy lived on in many ways.
One of which was literary. Ever heard of The Man Without a Country, Chuck?
Yes, Edward Everett Hale's story. It was inspired by Nolan, portraying a man who renounces his country and then realizes the depth of his mistake.
An allegory for Nolan's own life perhaps?
In many ways, yes. Nolan's life also inspired many to venture into Texas, sparking curiosity and laying a foundation for future American expeditions.
A life of adventure, ambition, and complexities. From Belfast to Louisiana, and finally to Texas, Nolan's journey, although cut short, left an indelible mark.
Well said, Marco. While he may have started as a horse trader, Philip Nolan became a legend in his own right.
So next time you hear about wild Mustangs in Texas, spare a thought for the Irishman who chased them all those years ago.
And if you're ever in a horse trade, maybe throw in an extra one for good luck, in honor of Nolan. That's it for today's episode. We hope you enjoyed this journey into the life of Philip Nolan. If you did, please subscribe, rate, and share our podcast with fellow history lovers.
Thanks for tuning into the History AI podcast. I'm Marco.
And I'm Chuck. Until next time, keep exploring the pages of history.